Every food you didn't know you could eat raw explained. We'll start with oats. Most people think oats need to be cooked. They don't. Raw oats are completely safe to eat and in some ways better for you than the hot bowl you grew up with. Oats contain a type of fiber called beta-glucan. When you cook them, some of that fiber breaks down. When you eat them raw, it stays intact, moving through your digestive system slowly, keeping you fuller for longer and feeding the good bacteria in your gut. The trick is soaking. Leave raw oats in water, milk, or yogurt overnight, and they soften on their own. No heat needed. The liquid does the work while you sleep. You still get the protein, the slow-release energy, and the fiber, just without the stove. Cooking oats was always about texture. Turns out your gut never needed the heat. Hugs, most people will not touch a raw egg. But athletes, chefs, and nutritionists have known for decades that eating eggs raw is not only safe, it is one of the fastest ways to get protein into your body. A raw egg contains all the same nutrition as a cooked one. Protein, healthy fats, vitamins A, D, and B12, plus choline, which your brain uses to think and focus. Cooked egg protein is absorbed at around 91%. Raw sits closer to 51%. So cooked wins on protein uptake, but raw preserves more of the heat-sensitive vitamins that cooking quietly destroys. The real concern is salmonella. It exists, but it is far rarer than most people think. Roughly 1 in every 20,000 eggs carries it. Buying pasteurized eggs removes that risk almost entirely. Raw eggs were always nutritious. The fear just made people forget. Beets. Most people only know beets roasted, boiled, or pulled from a jar. Raw beets are a completely different experience, and nutritionally they are the stronger version. When you cook a beet, heat breaks down its nitrates. Those nitrates are the reason beets matter. Your body converts them into nitric oxide, a compound that relaxes blood vessels, lowers blood pressure, and increases oxygen flow to your muscles. Athletes eat raw beets before training for exactly this reason. Eaten raw, beets are firm and crunchy with a deep, earthy sweetness. Grate them into a salad, slice them thin, or blend them into a smoothie. No cooking required. The only catch is the color. Beets stain everything they touch, including your hands and your cutting board. Your urine can turn pink too. Completely harmless, just surprising the first time. Roasting beets makes them softer. Eating them raw makes them work harder. Raw fish sounds dangerous. In most of the world, it is just Tuesday. Japan has served sashimi for centuries. Peru built an entire cuisine around ceviche. Scandinavian countries cure raw salmon into gravlax and eat it at breakfast. Raw fish is not a risk people ignore. It is a tradition built on understanding exactly which fish to use and how to handle them. The key variables are freshness, species, and temperature. Fish meant for raw consumption is either incredibly fresh or flash frozen first. Freezing at very low temperatures kills parasites that heat would otherwise handle. That is why sushi-grade fish exists as a category. It is a handling standard, not a marketing term. The fish itself is lighter, cleaner, and more delicate than any cooked version. Texture becomes the flavor. The danger in raw fish was never the fish. It was always the handling. Mushrooms. Everyone says, cook your mushrooms. It's repeated so often it feels like a rule. For most common varieties, it isn't. Button mushrooms, cremini, and portobello are all safe to eat raw. Slice them into a salad, eat them whole, or shave them thin over pasta. They are firm, mildly earthy, and slightly nutty when uncooked, a completely different texture from the soft version that comes out of a pan. The science behind cooking mushrooms is about breaking down chitin, the tough material that makes up their cell walls. Heat softens it, helping your body absorb more of their nutrients. Raw mushrooms still deliver B vitamins, potassium, and antioxidants, just at a slightly lower rate. Wild or exotic varieties are the exception. Some contain compounds that only become safe after heat breaks them down. Most mushrooms were never dangerous raw. Different just got mistaken for wrong. Everyone knows not to eat raw cookie dough. What most people get wrong is why. For years, the warning was about raw eggs. Salmonella, the story went, was hiding in the batter. That is mostly a myth. The real danger in raw dough is the flour. Flour is a raw agricultural product. It comes from wheat that grows in open fields, harvested and milled without any heat treatment along the way. That means it can carry E. coli picked up directly from the soil. Several outbreaks in recent years were traced back to raw flour, not eggs. The eggs in most modern recipes are either pasteurized or carry an extremely low risk. The flour is the variable almost nobody considered. Raw dough is not safe to eat, but almost nobody gets the reason right. The ingredient you were warned about was never really the problem. Corn. Most people have only ever eaten corn cooked, boiled, grilled, popped, or processed into something else entirely. But fresh sweet corn, pulled straight from the cob, is one of the most underrated raw foods there is. Raw sweet corn is juicy, crisp, and naturally sweet in a way that cooking reduces. Heat converts the sugars in corn into starch. Corn picked hours ago and eaten immediately tastes completely different from corn that sat in a pot. Nutritionally, raw corn holds onto more of its vitamin C and B vitamins. It is also high in fiber, and its natural sugars release slowly enough that they do not spike your blood sugar the way processed corn products do. The only requirement is freshness. Old corn turns starchy and bland whether you cook it or not. Corn was always sweet enough to eat as it came. The stove just became a habit. Beef. Raw beef has been eaten deliberately, carefully, and deliciously for centuries. Steak tartare is served in fine dining restaurants across Europe. Carpaccio, paper-thin slices of raw beef dressed in olive oil and lemon, originated in Italy and never left the menu. These are dishes built around the understanding that fresh, high-quality beef handled correctly carries very low risk. The science comes down to where bacteria live. On a whole cut of beef, harmful bacteria like E. coli sit on the outer surface. With tartare, the beef is trimmed of its outer layer before being minced, removing most of the risk at the source. The rules are strict. Fresh beef only from a trusted butcher, prepared and eaten the same day. Raw beef handled carelessly is dangerous. Handled correctly, it's a completely different conversation. Cacao. Most people have never eaten chocolate in its original form. What comes in a wrapper is the processed, sweetened, heat-treated end product. Raw cacao is what exists before any of that happens. Cacao beans grow inside large pods on trees. When harvested and dried without roasting, they keep a nutritional profile that the chocolate-making process largely destroys. Raw cacao is packed with magnesium, iron, and antioxidants called flavonoids, compounds that support heart health and reduce inflammation. Roasting darkens the flavor, but strips a significant portion of those benefits away. Eaten raw, cacao is intensely bitter and deeply complex. The taste is sharp, earthy, and almost fruity underneath. Raw cacao also contains theobromine, a mild natural stimulant similar to caffeine that sharpens focus without the sharp crash that follows a coffee. Chocolate became sweet because bitterness does not sell. The original version never needed the sugar. Kale. Kale has a reputation for being something you survive rather than enjoy. Most people cook it to soften the bitterness. That instinct is understandable, but it comes at a cost. Heat breaks down kale's most valuable compounds. Glucosinolates, the sulfur-based chemicals that give kale its protective properties, degrade significantly at high temperatures. Vitamin C disappears almost entirely when boiled. Raw kale holds on to all of it. The texture is the main obstacle. Fresh kale is tough and chewy in a way that puts most people off immediately. The fix is simple. Massage the leaves with a little olive oil and a pinch of salt for about 2 minutes. The fibers break down, the bitterness softens, and the leaves become tender enough to eat comfortably. Kale was never the problem. It just needed a different kind of preparation than a pan. Honey. The honey most people buy has been heated, filtered, and processed until it barely resembles what came out of the hive. Raw honey is the unprocessed version, and the difference is significant. Pasteurization kills wild yeasts that could cause fermentation during storage. That part makes commercial sense, but the same process destroys enzymes like diastase and invertase which aid digestion, along with most of the pollen and antioxidants that give honey its antimicrobial properties. Raw honey has been shown to slow bacterial growth in ways the processed version struggles to replicate. Raw honey is thicker, cloudier, and more complex in flavor. It crystallizes faster because the natural compounds have not been stripped out. That cloudiness is not a sign of spoilage. It means nothing has been removed. Processing honey made it easier to sell. It also made it less worth eating. Salmon. Salmon is probably the most widely eaten raw fish in the world, and most people who eat it don't know why it's safer than other raw proteins. The answer starts with freezing. Salmon can carry a parasite called Anisakis, a small worm that causes serious illness if consumed alive. Flash freezing the fish at -20 degrees Celsius for at least 24 hours kills it completely. Nearly all salmon sold for raw consumption has already gone through this process before it reaches a kitchen. What's left is a fish with exceptional nutritional value. Raw salmon is dense with omega-3 fatty acids, high-quality protein, and B vitamins, all better preserved without heat. The texture is silky and clean in a way that cooking fundamentally changes. Salmon was never the risk people imagined. The process behind it was always the point.